Hey guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. Let's go ahead and check out the armies. So today we have the Grey Knights Brotherhood Rapier, and we have the Adeptus Mechanicus Forge World Lucius.
Alright, so for today I'm bringing 2,000 points, or more specifically 1,994 points of Mechanicus. I've learned from the last game that you can't really mix and match the armies too well. You need to really go Canticles or Doctrinas, and so we're going to go mostly machines. So today we're going Forge World Lucius, which gives a +1 armor save if I'm being hit with damage 1, and +3 inches to all my shooting. So I'm a somewhat shooting army. So my warlord is a Tech Priest Manipulus, the biggest and beefiest one. His warlord trait gives him a 5-up feel no pain and a buff to nearby troops, and he has a 4-up armor save because of his relic and -1 damage. Yeah, just making him tough, making him hard to kill. Then I have the Tech Priest Dominus, and he has now I'm just bringing him for his buff, so he's going to be buffing my troops just by being near them. Then I have my Cybernetic Data Smith, who is pretty tough. He's going to be basically a companion to the Castellan robots for his buffs and such. And of course, all these guys have 2-up armor saves. That's another reason I brought them. And then to troops, we have 3 units of Cataphron Destroyers. These are ranged guys, 30-inch range. I'll now have 33 inches with my main weapon now because of Lucius. So I'm hoping these guys will do much better. And then I have in my elites 3 units of 12 Fulbright Electro Priests. These are the guys who, when they hit on a 6 to wound, do like 2 mortal wounds and stuff. And so I've given them each squad a Scorpius Dune Rider, which can hold up to 12. So that's why they're units of 12. So these guys are going to be punching through. Then for the heavy supports, I have a unit of 4 Castellan robots. So they're a little more expensive than a squad of Scutari, and I thought, would each of these guys be worth more than a unit of Scutari? And I was like, yes. So, however, these guys are a bit different than the last ones. They all have Castellan fists and heavy incendiary. So these guys are close range monsters. And technically speaking, they have 15 inches with their weapons now. I believe, yeah. I think. I'll have to look that up. And then we have Onagers. So this Onager over here with the red base has the neutron laser, which was very useful and good in the last game, so a super heavy hitter. And then I have this Onager Doomcrawler, which instead will have an eradication beamer, which is long range and short range. So it can do pretty good damage long range, but it can do very good damage short range. Now these two actually do not follow Canticles, they follow Doctrina. And so obviously I'm going to go with the +1 ballistic skill Doctrina and make sure these guys are just sniping fools left and right. And that is 2,000 points. The overall idea of the army is to shoot everything off the board and beat them to death with mortal wounds in the center.
Alright you guys, so for today I'm playing the Rapier Brotherhood, which is kind of a more aggressive brotherhood. And I'm playing 2,000 points. I'm pretty excited. I haven't played Grey Knights since they first came out with their own dedicated book, way back when they were just a part of the Ordo Malleus. So it'd be pretty exciting to see how they have shaped since like 4th edition or whatever it is. So starting off, I have a Brotherhood Librarian. Now he has 2 powers. He has Ethereal Castigation and Warp Shaping. So Warp Shaping allows me to change my Tide of Convergence or my Masters of the Warp thing. So like an army-wide buff, if you will. And then Ethereal Castigation says that this Psyker's unit can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, and then it can make a normal move as if it were your movement phase. So it allows a unit to shoot twice and then move. So they would shoot in this. Oh no, psychic phases first. So they basically run out. He uses a psychic phase ability on them. They get to shoot and then they get to move again. So they can pop out, shoot, and then hide again. And he has teleport strike like any of the Terminators. My Brotherhood ability or psychic power is Symphonic Strike, which my whole army has access to. Basically, it adds 1 to the attacks characteristics of models in that Psyker's unit. And that's it for him. He just has his regular Nemesis warding stave. Moving over to my Warlord is a Grandmaster in a Nemesis Dread Knight. So he has not just the Brotherhood, a psychic power, symphonic strike. He has Gate of Infinity and Empiric Amplification. So Gate of Infinity, I basically get to pick up one of my units and teleport it anywhere that's 9 inches away from enemy models, which is pretty cool. And they have to be within 18 inches of him. And then Empiric Amplification. Select one enemy unit within 12 inches and visible to him until the start of your next psychic phase. Each time an attack made with a Nemesis or Psi weapon is allocated to a model in that unit, add 1 to the damage characteristics of that attack. So he's got a pretty mean psychic buffs there. I did give him the... I don't know what the sword is called. His big sword thing, as opposed to the Demon Hammer or his just regular Dread Fists. And I gave him a heavy Psi Cannon. So in the Warhammer app, it allowed me to use 2. And then I read somewhere in the rules that he can only pick 1 of each. And so I was wondering why Battle Scribe was being difficult about it. But that's why. So he just has 1 heavy Psi Cannon. I know the model has 2 things on him, but I didn't pay the points for it. So he'll just have the 1 heavy Psi Cannon. He has 2 Warlord Stratagems and a Relic. So the Relic is the Augrium Scrolls. And each time he is selected to fight, I can reroll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll when resolving the bearer's attacks. It has to be with a Nemesis weapon, so obviously him with his big sword. He has the Inescapable Wrath, which is the Warlord trait for the Brotherhood he is in, which allows him to declare a charge even if he advanced, and first into the fray. So he has +1 to his advance and charge rolls, and whenever he charges into a unit, anyone else who charges a unit that he's within engagement range of, they get +1 to their charge as well. So he would be the first one in, and then people would pop up behind him. He also has the teleporter, so he can also teleport in. Moving over to Crow. So Castellan Crow is a unique character. I always thought he was really cool. I remember when Purifiers first came out, and their flame ability was way more ridiculous. It was like every model in the enemy squad, you would take it, and back then hordes were huge, and so they would just decimate hordes. It was hilarious. But anyway, so he's just a straight up character. He has obviously the Empiric Amplification of the Brotherhood, but he also has the Purifier specific spell, which is Purifying Flame, which basically can do D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. Or no, sorry, it does 3 mortal wounds, and if the psychic test was 11 plus, it's D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. And then he has his Relic ability, and he's a character, so he has what he has. Just behind him in the troops section, I have the 2 troops. They're just Grey Knight squads. Now each of them has 1 warding stave, 1 Nemesis Daemon Hammer, 1 just Nemesis Force Sword, and then 2 halberds. Just to kind of give them a mix of damage things. I didn't really know what I was fighting. But there is a stratagem that gives that a unit with a warding stave an invuln save for that phase, I believe. So most of my units will have 1 warding stave inside. I figure, why not? It just makes sense to me. And so I just have those 2 units to fill up kind of troop slots and to kind of run around and sit on objectives and whatever. Just behind them is another troop choice, which is just regular Brotherhood Terminators. The sergeant or the Justicar has the Demon Hammer. 1 guy has a sword, same makeup as the regular guys. There's a warding stave and then 2 halberds. And then they have, so each squad has abilities. So the strike squads both have Hammer Hand, which allows me to reroll wound rolls. And then I believe, these Brotherhood Terminators also just have Hammer Hand. And so that's my troop section, so all of those guys will have objectives secured as well. And all of them can teleport, as I do believe, because Grey Knights. So moving into the elite sections is a Paladin Ancient. Now usually I don't take Ancients, I don't particularly care for them, but Paladin Ancients have a chapter banner which gives +1 to hit in melee, as well as I think it gives a buff to let me look at it real quick. It gives a buff to paladins very specifically. Let me look at it. Add 1 to the attacks character. Yeah, so it gives paladins near him +1 attack. Now, I just gave him a Stormbolter. I didn't pay for his falchion, so he will not hopefully get himself into combat, but he will be around paladins who are in combat. And then he has Sanctuary, which gives a unit for a 4-up invuln. And so he's just kind of a buff character that shoots stuff. And then just behind him is a very full, very buff squad of paladins. So a squad of 10, this is max size. They have a warding stave. The Paragon, so fancier sergeant, has a demon hammer. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 swords, and then 4 halberds, and 4 incinerators, which is the Grey Knight Flamer, essentially. It is a heavy D6, and it's strength 6, -1 single damage, 12-inch range. And they can obviously all teleport. So just a lot of teleporting going on. And so they're mean. They have a lot of attacks. And then just behind them, the final elite section is Purifiers. They all have halberds except for the Knight of the Flame, which is their sergeant. He has a demon hammer because, again, I didn't really know what I was going up against, and it's good to have some heavier hits go on, which, I mean, it's basically it's just a thunder hammer, essentially. But a Grey Knight thunder hammer. And obviously they have the Purifying Flame ability. Now, over to the left, you'll see a squad of interceptors. They basically have teleport packs on their backs. They all have swords, though, except for 1 warding stave. And they have a once per game stratagem that allows them to essentially teleport, which is pretty cool. And so they're just speedy guys with the Stormbolters. And then all the way on the right, you'll find my heavy supports, which are a Purgation squad, and they have 4 silencers, which is 6 shots, I believe. Yeah, heavy 6, strength 4, -1 AP, and single damage. So just kind of a lot of shots coming out of them, and we will hope for the best. I'm kind of excited for this.
Alright, so for today's mission, we have Tide of Conviction, which is Control 2, Control 3, Control More. The board is split in half. Red side's half is one territory, blue side's half is its own territory. Secondary is at the end of every turn except for the 5th one. You gain 2 points if you control an objective in your opponent's territory. And on the 5th turn, you will gain a bunch of points if you control it at the end of the turn. So it's a heavy conquest mode, very push forward, be very aggressive. Yeah. Alright. So for deployment of terrain, so as a Mechanicus, this army is half shooty, half melee, but the melee is designed to punch forward and take things, but they really need to have enemies softened up. So basically, I place a bunch of terrain in what I think could be my side. So my opponent is only 24-inch range, so honestly, I have complete advantage here. This is really beneficial for me, so I'm placing some cover on the bottom. Maybe I'll get it, but if I go up top, I'm fine either way. I just need sight lines, and I just need to block my opponent from moving. Honestly, the top is actually even more beneficial for me because it gives even more line of sight and stuff, and he has 2 short range of guns. So overall, my main idea was to create safe havens for my shooting, to protect him from their shooting, and also be able to move my vehicles through and stuff. So basically, mostly shooting lanes is how I designed my terrain.
So essentially I was trying to kind of block but still create movement zones. And so I placed a lot of walls just to kind of help break up bigger gaps of open space. I probably did everything a little too symmetrically. I don't know if that actually went in my favor, but because they're just giant diagonal lines down the table now. But I'm hoping it will help me be able to kind of move from cover to cover and get into combat before anything too crazy happens.
Alright, so for secondaries, for Mechanicus, grind them down. I have very few units. They have like 1 or 2 more than me. My guys are very tough. I figure this is possible. And Abhor the Witch, which is an auto counter for these very psychic heavy armies. Every squad I kill, I'm getting 2 points. Your characters I kill, I'm going to get 3. And then Uncharted Sequencing. This one is... I would normally not select it, but because of the layout of the map, I think I have a good chance. And so essentially, in the pre-battle, so after both sides are completely deployed and we know who goes first, I then decide the order of objectives, and I'm going to put a dice on there and I'm going to mark it with a number and lock it in place. And essentially what it's going to be is, if I control that objective on the turn number that I have predicted, I will get 3 points. And so, a lot of gambling here, but selecting that third secondary has always been so difficult. So if I'm very pushy, conquesty, I think I have a chance. So let's see how this goes.
Yeah, I find usually it's rare that you find that you have an army or a setup that gives you an easy third choice.
Yeah.
This one time I only had one easy choice and the other two was just like, well, it's all garbage now. So
Nephilim has really made it difficult. Yeah.
So, faction-specific objective, because that's kind of one of our house rules. We always have one faction secondary. Now with Warzone Nephilim, that's easy, especially with like the 8th edition books, like the older Space Marine books, because they gave them all one secondary that's pretty decent. So I have Teleport Assault. For the Grey Knights, it's faction-specific. So basically, anytime they enter the battlefield using Teleport Strike, the Shunt Stratagem for my Jump Pack guys, or the Gate of Infinity Psychic Power, and they destroy an enemy unit, I gain 4 points. So basically, if they show up and eliminate something, I get points. The second one is Engage on All Fronts, because my entire army can teleport starting up, and then I have ways to teleport through it. And so my army is potentially very mobile. We'll see what actually happens. But so I was like, well, and also they're melee, so they're going to try and get up. So Engage on All Fronts seemed kind of like a natural choice. And then Nephilim data, third one I was kind of having a little trouble with. But I was like, you know what, this one's kind of easy. I have a couple troops that I can use to just kind of do this with. So I'm going to give Nephilim data a go, and we'll see if we can pull it off.
Alright, so for deployment, so I wanted to, as the Mechanicus, I started off with my Warlord, but I forgot which one that was, because they have the same base size, one looks fatter. So at the beginning I forgot which one I placed down, but I got it right the first time. So basically the Warlord is in the center of the battlefield, ready, and then the Dominus is going to be set up right next to him. And then the overall strategy was, because my opponent has very short range, I could be more aggressive with my positioning. So I basically tried to block out all angles and stuff from them being able to deep strike or get in and such. And I basically had my transports up front to just be able to rush out. I had my onagers in positions where they could rotate around walls like turrets, because they have actually pretty decent movement. So I'll be able to adapt to where my opponent is going. The Cataphrons are spreading out, shoot and do good damage, and so I feel like I'm pretty well spread out. And the Castellan robots, because of my sequencing or what I envision it's going to be like, they're in a position to better enforce that. So that's the idea going forward. So that is my deployment.
Yeah, so I was trying to debate between having everything deep strike or
You
teleport
can't.
strike or not. Well, Grey Knights I believe I can, because the whole army has the rule. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's to figure out later, I guess. But I was like, you know what, I do still have like some things that I want to try and hold on to and do. But of course now after I set it up, I was like, I might as well have at least done more of them. But anyway, so I set up my Brigaders, my 2 Grey Knight like regular strike squads, and my Interceptors with the teleport packs. And I hunkered them all behind my home territory, my home terrain piece, just that way they can't shoot me very much, or at all, because my strike squad can do Nephilim data from where they're at, and my Interceptors move pretty fast, so I can get them, relatively far, until other stuff comes in. So I think I just kind of hunkered down
All right, so a quick blurb at the end. Since I had the camera on, I didn't see how many his reserves were, but I remembered this, my opponent, because I've played Dark Angels before, that half your power level and half your units have to be on the board. And so he had 7 units and some in reserves and like only 5 or 4 on the battlefield. So he just rapidly put out enough so that he has more units. However, it's probably not half his power level, but we're just going to waive that for this time as a learning experience because we're not spending another 30 minutes calculating that. So that's why. All right, going first or second. So initially, if I get turn 1, these Terminators, while out in the open and stuff, will probably lose someone. So I would have some advantage. I would start taking up the board. I won't be able to get to the second. Yeah, I will not be able to get to the second spot anywhere in here. So yeah, so I won't be able to get to the second spot. So me going first essentially is getting into the board, but getting very close to where you can countercharge me easier. I'll get some shots off, but there really isn't enough that justifies it. If I go second, I will basically have more targets to shoot. It will slow my advance a bit. However, next turn your deep strikes come in, and so I would probably spend my first turn if I went first filling up the board, making sure you can only deep strike from the front, and so it is to my advantage, stuff like that. And yeah, that's pretty much what I figure would happen if I went first. If I go first, it's better for me second turn on. If I go second, might be a little bit better. I can make both work, so that's all I can figure.
Yeah, so yeah, so I think I want to go first. I think that'll be best for me because my army is in deep strike. Well, most of it, or half of it, whatever, is in deep strike. If I go second, it means you have 2 full turns before they come in. But if I go first, you only have 1 turn before they come in. So by that, I think by default, me going first is better. Not that I, like, first turn, I wouldn't really have much to do. I would do some, the Nephilim data, and I might plop these Terminators on this objective. I don't know. But, so my first turn won't be exciting if I go first, but it will allow my Deep Strikers to come in when you've only had 1 turn as opposed to 2. That's basically my only main reason to wanting to go first. Otherwise, I would be fine going second, because it wouldn't matter so much to me. But I think this time it's kind of important.
Yeah. So, alright then. Well, let's see what happens. My game froze. It didn't matter.
We actually rolled the opposite. Mine was sitting on a 1, and I rolled a 6, and yours was sitting on a 6.
I called it when my game froze, though, so at least it didn't matter. Alright, so
You're not.
Grey Knights turn 1. Alright, so for pre-battle, interestingly enough, so I'm doing my secondary, the sequencing thing, where I select objectives and I have to control them by the end of that turn. So what I did was I took dice, I set them to a certain rotational number, which will stand for the turns, and then I locked them in place so we can't grab them, move them. They're basically rocks right now. And so essentially, I base this pretty much, I figure I will be able to get this objective here, number 1, on my first turn at the end of that. Second will be around here. It'll be possibly be contested, but I'll have so many forces there and strength there that it's very likely. Third is a safe bet over here in the center. Fourth is up here, which will be an extension. By then, I should have killed a lot of the guys, and so I'll be moving out from there. And fifth is a pipe dream. We'll see if that happens.
You guys, so for command phase, literally nothing at all. Movement phase, though, my interceptor squad ran out, and my Terminators moved a whole 3 inches through this oil slick. smoldering oil slick. And then at the end they started doing the Nephilim data. So yeah, so that was it for my movement. Literally nothing else moved. Nothing is touching the windows, so really nothing is kind of in line of sight. I'm just kind of hunkering down for right now. Alright, you guys, so for Psychic Phase, just so everyone is aware, my Masters of the Warp, or my Tides of the Warp that's active right now is Tide of Celerity, which is basically whenever I advance or whenever I charge, the minimum each dice reads as is a 3. So, just so everyone's aware. Anyway, so I did Ethereal Castigation on my Interceptors. There's nothing in range to shoot at, so they just literally made a move, which was really kind of the plan to begin with. And so they were able to move a whole 12 inches again. Now they're not able to do anything for the rest of the turn, but there's nothing for them to do anyway, so that worked out. But yeah, so that was my Psychic Phase, and really my turn. Alright, you guys, so for points, as I said, this would be a super uneventful first turn, but I was able to get one Nephilim. It's not really a token, but like counter. So I did it with my Terminators, and because they are a troop, I had to -1 from my roll. So instead of needing a 5 or less, I needed a 4 or less, and I rolled a 3. So I was able to get my Nephilim data on that one, which is super convenient. Yeah. That was literally it for my points.
So that was a lot of checkmate movement. So my canticles for the first turn I decided would be Invocation of the Machine Vengeance, which basically each time an advance roll or a charge roll is made for unit, roll 1d6 and discard the lowest. And so my idea was I will use this to rapidly take the board with my vehicles and other things that I need to run and move. And so I did. The first transport got a total of 18-inch movement. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to touch his objective. I'm going to claim it. And that way I will get the mission secondaries 2 points for the turn or stuff. Yeah, and then the rest of the vehicles moved up to... So the idea is, I know he's going to have a lot of deep striking, so I'm doing everything I can to block out his deep striking so that he can only deep strike from his deployment zone. So my vehicles moved out to create area zones to block him out, and as well, that's pretty much it, and also expecting to be charged. And so if the vehicles are charged and destroyed, the people on the inside will disgorge, and they will disgorge in a place that is more fitting for them. That's the idea. The Castellan robots also ran because they're close range, and so to sort of be a good self-fulfilling prophecy of like the data tethers and stuff like that. Yeah, so they're in a good spot. Cybernetic Data Smith ran and joined them as well, since he is their, I don't know, he buffs them, kind of. And then the rest of the Cataphrons moved up into positions where they could help block out and get line of sight. The Onagers also moved out to get line of sight and also block out. My Tech Priests moved in to give buffs to the blue Cataphrons and also be able to block out, and so I should be completely fine and safe from rear deep striking. And of course the Cataphrons have like basically Auspex scan, so that'll help a little bit. And that overall was my plan. So this was just a lot of chess movement here. Alright, so for my shooting phase, first I started off on the right with my Cataphron destroyers aiming at his interceptors. I did have line of sight to 1. I then proceeded to use the command ability Elimination Volley, which all 6s automatically wound the target at half range, and guess what? I was at half range for my guns, because Lucius adds 3 inches to everything, and they're, so 33 inches, like 18 and a half I was within. And so then I fired, and their Phosphorus Blasters do nothing, but the Heavy Grav Cannon actually did some good damage because they do 2 damage each for every 3-up armor save the opponent has. And so I killed 4 of them right out. Then moving over, just started firing at the Terminators. So I had my Onager Doomcrawler Red fire at them, ended up doing 1 wound. Had my Onager on the left fire at him with their weapon, did absolutely nothing. And then my green Cataphron Destroyers fired at the Terminators and did nothing. Then I had the other Cataphrons fire. Now these ones had buffs, so they had reroll 1s, and they were not affected by ballistic skill modifiers, so them being in an oil slick would not give them like a -1 to hit. And so basically these guys did really good and successfully killed one and did 2 wounds to another. And so that was the end of my shooting phase. Pretty good. Alright, so and I'm conquering all the objectives, but that'll be for the next turn. I was successfully able to get Tide of Conviction. I touched one of their sides objectives, so that's good. I did not kill any units. I killed half a unit, but not good enough, so I got some grind them down. Abhor the Witch, didn't kill anyone. Uncharted Sequencing. I have the objective that I thought I'd have in the first round. So, yeah. Overall, the game is not really done yet. This is like the opening move, so we have no idea how it's going to go. So the next turn is really going to set the mood.
First, so my Purgators basically moved into the corner, so they would be able to touch the wall, they'd be able to look at, they'd be able to shoot. My 2 squads of strike squads basically moved out left and right. The one on the, I guess it would be your guys' right, is started doing the retrieve Nephilim data, while my interceptor squad teleported through the wall and are now within pretty decent range of these Cataphrons. And then my Terminators, because they were still in terrain, moved 3 inches onto the objective and are now claiming the objective. Because they are troops, so they are objective secured by default. And then that's when all of the deep strikes came. Oh, and my Librarian stepped out with the strike squad on what would be your guys' left. Then the deep strikes came in, so Grandmaster came in first, and he is sitting 9 inches from the area with his Castellans and the Dune Rider and the Datasmith and whatever. And then the Paladins and the Paladin Ancient all popped up right next to him. And then on the other side, the Purifiers and Crow showed up. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Alright, you guys, so a whole bunch of stratagems going, or not stratagems. Bells? What are these? Psyker powers. Anyway, so it started off with the Grandmaster giving himself Empiric Amplification, which failed, so he did not do it. And then I went on to the Interceptors, which basically tried to smite these Cataphrons, which they did, but they only did 1 damage, so that was kind of pathetic. The Paladin Ancient also tried smote the Scorpius Dune Rider directly in front of it, only doing, again, 1 mortal wound. The Paladins gave themselves Hammerhand, and then the Purgators gave themselves Astral Aim. These Grey Knights here, what did they do? They smote nothing, because I think it failed. Or yeah, something like that. No, they smote the Dune Rider. Or did they? Or was it Crow? Oh no, he did something else. Okay, yeah. Then Castellan Crow did Empiric Amplification on this Dune Rider, the one right in front of my Brotherhood Terminators. Then my Brotherhood Terminators gave themselves Hammerhand. The Purifiers did Purifying Flame on that Dune Rider, doing flat 3 damage. And the Librarian smote it, doing an additional 1 damage. And then I used a stratagem, Mental Focus, to let my Paladins go again, to try and get them the Symphonic Strike, so giving them an extra attack, but they failed a 5. So, because they rolled a 4. So all in all, most things went off. We'll see how useful it is. The smites obviously were kind of pathetic, but who knows? It might be just enough damage to finish something off. So yeah.
So I will add into that this is the second turn, so I had a chance to choose a new Canticles, and I chose the Canticles for -1 to hit melee instead of the 5-up save against mortal wounds. I knew he would have a strong psychic phase this turn, but I didn't think he would do that much damage to me. And in total, he did 6 mortal wounds, and I did a theory hammer, and I saved 2 of those, so it was a good choice not to take that yet. So, good call on my part, just FYI.
Alright, you guys, so my interceptors started off the shooting phase. They started by shooting at the Cataphrons. Because they're so close, they were all their Stormbolters were in rapid fire range. So it was 16 shots. He failed, like, I think 5 wounds got through
4
or something
wounds.
like.
I failed every single 3 up.
Right, so he lost 1, and then he has 1 guy down at like 1 wound left, which will be nice in the combat phase. And then I had my Paladin Ancient, my Grandmaster, my Paladins. I had my 1 strike squad all shoot at the Scorpius Dune Rider in front of his Castellans. I was only able to do 10 damage, which was shockingly terrible. And then Crow, my Purifiers, and my Terminators all shot at the Scorpius Dune Rider in front of my, on the other side of the map.
On the left, yeah.
Yeah, and they did 2 damage, I think.
Yep.
So just, wonderful shooting. And then the Purgators shot at the Dune Rider in the middle, and again, as per the standard, they did 2 damage. So that was my wild shooting phase, you guys. Granted, it was a lot of shots, so if they didn't have such a high toughness, I say high toughness, but basically if I didn't need 5s, a lot more well, he had a pretty good armor save too, and they have pretty crappy AP.
Although
so,
one thing to note is that my opponent did not destroy the Scorpius Dune Rider on the right because it would have screwed him over, so it's almost dead. But the thing is, though, if that would have died, the guys on the inside, some of them would have died, obviously, but they would have disembarked far from their charge range, basically being impossible. So he didn't finish it off with all his shooting, because he did 2 wounds to the Scorpius Dune Rider in the middle when he could have done that to the other one. He didn't, simply so that he'd have a target to charge at. So, quick thinking.
So all in all, okay shooting phase. There was definitely a good number of shots, but the damage that translated was not as good.
Yeah, transports for the win.
Yeah. Alright, you guys, so just a lot of depression going around. My Grandmaster, I rolled him first for the reroll. He failed with double 1s. So I deleted those dice naturally. Used a command point, re-rolled it. I got double 2s. So he didn't make it, which was a problem. So then I rolled for my Paladins. They didn't make it. Then I rolled for my Interceptors because I was like, well, I need something to work out. And they got it, but they rolled an 8, which is exactly what everyone else would need. Whatever. And so they made it in to these Cataphrons. And then I rolled for my Terminators on the other side, my Brotherhood Terminators. He was 4.5 inches away, and I rolled a 4, so they just barely got in, which was super dumb. And then my Purifiers rolled for those guys, and they just barely. They 100% missed, like horribly. It was like a 3 or something, I don't know. So yeah, all in all, probably one of my worst charge phases, which will be reflected in who is still alive next turn. So yeah, fun stuff. That was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so for combat, my Interceptors went first, and they did exactly enough damage. I think 2 wounds got unsaved, 3 wounds went through, which was just enough to kill the squad. And then my Terminators swung, which actually I guess you have that Dune Rider to swing back on if you want. But because of the -1 to hit, the Demon Hammer was not able to make a single hit connect, and the other guys also did nothing. I think the 1 wound that went through he saved. So,
yeah,
pretty crappy combat phase, followed by a devastatingly terrible charge phase.
Well, it was also very bad because so I chose the Canticle, which was -1 melee, which helped keep them alive, but I was hoping that Dune Rider would have died, because then it would have disgorged all my guys and I would have taken the objective next turn. But I marked it for turn 5, so we've still got time.
Well, alright you guys, so I was able to destroy something in this turn out of my deep strikes.
What did you destroy?
Your cataphrone. Actually,
that wasn't out of Deep Strike.
That wasn't out of Deep Strike, so I got nothing. That's pathetic. Okay, well, I got another Nephilim data thing, so that will be hopefully useful later. Yeah, so all in all, not looking great. Really bad charges, worse combat. So I guess the question is, what will, if it just depends on what survives after this turn. And that will basically determine. So his battle round here will determine whether or not we actually go into round 3. So yeah.
Alright, so for the movement phase, I disgorged my 2 Doom Crawlers that were not contested in combat, so they were able to move wholly within 3 inches away. After that, it was cautious movement. My other Doom Crawler that was fighting the Terminators retreated, but still did his best to stay on the point. And then my Cataphrons moved into positions to better hold things. Warlord and the other guy moved up to maintain the buffs. My Scorpiuses eventually moved. My Fulgurite Electro Priests, the blue squad, moved towards the Grandmaster and Paladin Ancient. The green squad of Fulgurites moved eventually towards the Terminator squad. Onagers moved towards get better line of sights to targets. And yeah, and we'll see how this goes. Alright, so my units fired. So I start off with the Castellan robots firing at the Grey Knights that he had on my objective. And so essentially what happened was they wiped them out. So they had plus 3 inches to their flamers because they're Lucius pattern. And so with their AP minus 2 weapons, they 4d6 shots, strength 5, AP minus 2, wiped out the squad did exactly 8 wounds. Then after that, the big Onager Doomcrawler with its neutron laser fired at the Grandmaster did absolutely nothing, did 2 wounds. I spent a command point to reroll, and then essentially what happened was he just saved them all. 4-up invulnerable save. The Scorpius Dune Rider next to him fired at some Grey Knights, did a wound. And the Fulgurite Electro Priest, I used an ability of theirs called Electromancer's Wrath, where I select an enemy nearby, and then I can roll a d6, 2 through 5, does d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, does 2d3. I successfully did 1 mortal wound, which he apparently has a 5-up save for, and he saved it. And then the rest went. So the Onager Doomcrawler that's green on the bottom left fired at the Terminators and did absolutely nothing, even with its heavy concentrated beam. Then the Cataphrons fired at the Purifiers up top, and they did a bunch of wounds. They killed like 5 of them. And then the blue squad with all the buffs, with the reroll to 1s, no modifiers to their ballistic skill or no negatives, fired at them, did 1 wound. Absolutely true. Oh, actually, no, they did do a wound. Then the Dominus, the Tech Priest in red, fired at them and did 1 wound. And that was not the best. Alright, so for charges, I started off with the Electro Priests charging. They managed to get in. They got a 9, they didn't need that much. They surrounded the Paladin Ancient and the Grandmaster Nemesis. Then the Castellan robots charged. They made it in against the Paladins. He overwatched and he successfully did 2 wounds to me. And then I had my Fulgurites on the other side charge the Terminators, got in on an 8, made it an easy. Alright, so for the fight phase, first I activate a stratagem called Electroshock for 1 CP, which I can take one of my characters or core units and force an enemy unit to fight last. And I use the Castellan robots. Castellan robots are not core, but if they're within 3 inches of a Cybernetic Datasmith, they are. And so I force his 10 unit squad of paladins to fight last. Once that was done, I had my Fulgurites, the blue, swing on the enemy. So 5 of them out of the 12 swung on the Grandmaster, did a total of 5 wounds. And then 7 of them swung on the Ancient and just obliterated him right out with the mortal wounds they caused. Now, this was the reason why I chose this is because if these guys kill a single unit, they gain buffs. They get a 4-up invulnerable save from their 5, and when they charge, they do extra damage. So I wanted to go for the easy kill to guarantee that the squad would be tougher. And then on the left, he interrupted for 2 CP to have his Terminator swing on my green squad, and he successfully killed 4 of them. And then I had them swing back, and they successfully only killed 1 guy in combat. He removed 1, but that was because I forgot that in the charge phase that these guys get to do extra like mortal wounds on a 6 for engagement range stuff. And so I forgot about that, so we just did that after the fact. So they only killed 1 in combat because they didn't roll a single 6 to wound. They didn't do any of the mortal wounds I was expecting them to. And then the Castellan robots swung on the paladins, and they kind of whiffed. They only successfully killed 2 despite having 20 attacks. And then his paladin swung back and successfully killed 1 and brought another Castellan robot to only 1 wound. So that fight is going south fast. And yeah, that was the combat phase. But oh yeah, and his Grandmaster successfully killed 3 of my guys, which was very impressive to do considering they now have a 4-up and a 5-up. So alright, since this mission is Control 2, I only managed to get 1 primary, so I got 4 points there. However, grind them down. He killed 1 of my units of Cataphrons. I responded by killing the unit that killed the Cataphrons, and I wiped out his Ancient, killing his Ancient, which now gave me grind them down. And then Abhor the Witch. The 2 units were witches, so I gained 2 points for the squads. Actually, wait, no. The Ancient was a character, so I get 3 points for that. And Uncharting Sequences, playing it safe, I got the other 1 correctly at the end of my turn 2. I have that objective, so I get 6 points for that. And so far, it's really turning in my tide. My opponent really has to basically wipe me out, which is somewhat possible because the Castellans are just flopping. So he has to do some really strong killing right now, otherwise he's not going to win. Alright, we didn't show it, but we're going to start showing it from now on morale. So basically, the Fulgurite Priest had a horrible morale phase on both sides. Both the green and blue squads failed the morale and had horrible attrition tests, and each of them lost 4 guys each. Absolutely terrible, so that swung it in his favor.
Yeah. And then as far as movement goes, my Purifiers and Castellan Crow moved up towards his green Fulgurites and the Scorpius Dune Rider with people still in it. And then my Grey Knight Strike Squad that was next to my Librarian moved up towards this Scorpius Dune Rider. Paladin stayed in combat. The Librarian moved back into cover with the Purgators. And my Grey Knight Strike Squad by my Grandmaster moved towards, I guess, him. But everything else stayed in combat because now that I don't have the -1 to hit, it means that they will hopefully be swinging much, much better. Alright, you guys, so for this turn, I started off with my Brotherhood Librarian, and he did Warp Shaping, which changed my Tide of the Warp to Tide of Escalation, which means anyone and everyone could use the Brotherhood Psychic power. It would just go up in charge amount each time. So from there, what I did was I went to my Paladins and did Symphonic Strike, giving them +1 attack, and it did go off. So that was good. And then I went to my Brotherhood Terminators and gave it to them. It also went off. And then I went to my Purifiers, trying to do Purifying Flame on the Electro Priests, and with their +1 to cast it, they failed. Then Crow did it, and it went off, and he killed 2 of them, so there's only 2 left. And then, let's see, my Grandmaster did Gate of Infinity on my Strike Squad, and so they plopped back over in that corner there. They're gonna try and take the objective and kill that Dune Rider for 4 points, so their charge will be important. And then my Strike Squad in the middle of the board did Hammerhand on themselves. It went off, but they rolled double 6s, so they got not Irresistible Force. What is it called? Perils of the Warp. And then my Purgators Astral aimed themselves. It went off, and then the Strike Squad on the top, or the ones that got Gate of Infinity, to use Hammerhand on themselves, rolling double 6s again, and it actually killed 1 guy. So it was 3 mortal wounds that came through, but they saved 2 of them because of Grey Knights. But one went through and one guy had a wound, so it took one guy out. But anyway, yeah, and so that was my psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, relatively simple. The Grey Knights that Gate of Infinity shot at the Scorpius Dune Rider. They were originally able to do one wound, but he later remembered that he has +1 save against single damage, so the wound went back, so they did nothing. Then we went to the Grandmaster, who shot with his silencer, his heavy silencer or something like that. Heavy side cannon, there it is. And through their invulns and their feel no pain, he was able to kill off 2 of them. And then my Purifiers and Crow shot at his Dune Rider, and I just lumped their shots together. Anyway, so they did 1 wound, all in all. And then my Grey Knight Strike Squad in the middle shot at his Cataphren Destroyers, doing 0 damage. But then my Brigaders shot at his Cataphrons and did 5 damage, so that was nice. And that was my shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so I had a couple of charges that went through and some that did not. So the one that I wanted to get through was the Strike Squad onto his Dune Rider, because I'm trying to get those stupid secondaries, but it did not happen, even with a reroll. They failed both of the rolls. So the Strike Squad in the middle charged in, they got in, the Purifiers got in on the Dune Rider on the left, and Crow tried to charge the Electro Priest. He needed a 4 or a 5, and he rolled double ones. So I didn't have any points or the ability to re-roll it, so he's just going to sit there like an idiot and get shot later. And yeah, that was my charge phase. Okay, so I don't remember where I started. I think I started with the Strike Squad in the middle. They destroyed the vehicle, the transport that was there, and allowed them to consolidate into the Castellans. And then the other, the Purifier swung, they destroyed the Dune Strider by them. A bunch of the Fulgrites got out, they lost 3 in the explosion. He forced it to explode using his command point, so he lost an Electro Priest, I lost a Grey Knight?
Yeah. 1 Terminator.
Oh yeah, because for whatever reason they had 3 mortal wounds. And then, I don't know if I lost any of the Purifiers. I think I had.
No,
maybe
you didn't. I didn't roll anything on that. So.
Yeah. And then, so they swung, then his Castellan swung. They killed off 2 Paladins, I believe. 3.
Despite doing 10 wounds, he saved so many 4-ups.
Yeah. And so, then I swung with my Grandmaster. He killed off the last of those guys to the man. And then I swung back with I think it was just the Paladins at this point. And they killed 2 of the Castellans and leaving 1 with 3 wounds. So the Paladin with the halberd failed the squad. So he had 5 attacks and he only needed 2 to go through to finish him off, but he did nothing. So, but he is wounding on 5s, I guess. So there's that. But yeah, so that was a combat phase. I don't know where that leaves me in terms of the game, but I did do a lot of damage, so we'll see. We'll see.
Alright, for morale, my green Fulgright squad did have to roll, and on a 6 they would fail and would be wiped out. They didn't. They made it on a 4. And the red squad with the Fulgrights did their morale. They needed a 6 to fail it, but they made it, so on a 5 and under, they were good.
I had hold 2, hold 3 on the primaries. I don't believe I held more because I think it was literally just a tie. I did not get teleport assault. I tried to, it did not work out. I did get engaged on all fronts though because they teleported there, and I didn't get any Nephilim data, so not a good turn, but there was a lot of damage done in the middle, so we'll see what happens in his turn. But yeah.
Alright, so for the command phase, my Tech Priests and Dominus gave their buffs to the Cataphren Destroyer, so basically this is not going to have any issues with their ballistic skill, no ballistic skill modifiers, but the Dominus does give out some AoE buffs that are pretty good. So, and then the rest just moved into position to be able to deal with the enemy better. That's pretty much it. So for shooting phase, a bunch of random stuff happened, so I don't really recall. So I had the blue Cataphrons fire at the Knight Justicars on the side, only killed 2. I had the Scorpius Dune Rider that was next to them fire at them, did 1 wound. And then I went big, so the Onager Dune Rider on the left, the green one, fired at Castellan Crow because he was out in the open and completely wiped him out. Then I had my Onager Dune Crawler, the red, with a powerful neutron laser fire at the Grandmaster, and he saved them all. Would have wiped him out if he failed them. My Castellan Robot, since it's a vehicle, can fire in melee, so he fired his Flamer at the Grey Knights, the Strike Squad, killed 1. Yeah, and the green squad of Cataphrons fired at the Grandmaster and did nothing as well. So the guy's just tanking shots. Alright, so I had my lone Fulgurite Electro Priest on the left charge the Terminator. He did not do a mortal wound to it on the charge. And then the Cybernetica Datasmith charged the Grey Knight Strike Squad because he could probably do something. I don't know. Alright, so at the fight phase, so the green Fulgurite Electric Priest swung on the Grey Knight Terminator, did 2 wounds to him, but didn't do any mortals, and so my opponent saved them all. And then the Cybernetic Datasmith swung against the Grey Knights, but missed all his attacks and didn't wound. And then he swung back with the Paladins against the Castellan and killed it completely. The Castellan exploded and did a mortal wound to everyone nearby, which everyone his Grandmaster saved it, but his Paladin squad didn't, and his Grey Knight Strike squad didn't. And then my Fulgurites, the giant squad of red, swung against the one Paladin holding him back, wiped him out completely, and that was pretty much it, except then his Grey Knight Terminator swung against the last surviving member of the green Fulgurite squad and wiped him out. And that was combat. Alright, so for points wise, I did Control 2, Control 3 at the start, so I got 8 points from primaries. Grind them down, he killed way more units than I did. Abhor the Witch, I killed Castellan Crow, so I got an extra 3 points for the Psyker. Uncharted Sequencing, I have my home objective, which I thought I would have. And that's it for points. I have double my opponents, so let's see how this goes.
Alright, you guys, so for the movement phase, my strike squad on the bottom right move forward. They're gonna take their final vengeance on the Dune Rider, I really hope. They haven't done much so far, so we'll see. The strike squad in the middle actually moved up to his home objectives, and so I'm hoping for some good news here, but we will see. Good news has not followed me this game. The Paladins are staying for now, and then the Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight, he moved forward. He didn't run. I was thinking of having him run, but it's only a 7-inch charge that he needs, so I'm probably gonna leave it. The Brotherhood Terminator on the far left, he left combat, and the Librarian is poking his head out from behind the building finally, because I need him to do things. So yeah, so that was the movement phase. It is the end game, so I need to book it. Alright, you guys, so for my psychic phase, I start off with my Brotherhood Librarian, and he used warp shaping, to change my Tide of the Warp to Tide of Convergence, giving 6 inches to my side weapons, and on 6s to wound, my Nemesis weapons do a mortal wound. So yeah, and then I went to my Purgators. They tried to do Astral Aim, they failed horribly, but I didn't care enough to use a command point on it. Then my Grandmaster teleported my Paladins up to that back corner, and that worked. So then they gave themselves Armored Resilience, giving them +1 to their armor save, and then both of the strike squads hammer-handed themselves. My one Terminator brother, my Brotherhood Terminator, was unable to do anything because he fell back, but We will see how that goes. So yeah, yep, that was my psychic phase. All right, you guys. So for the shooting phase, kind of a lot happened actually. The Purgator shot at his full squad, well, not full squad, but of his Fulgurites on the objective, and they were actually able to the man, wipe them off. He had a lot of bad saves, but they also had a lot of shots. And then I'm trying to think who shot next. The Grey Knights in the middle of the board, so the strike squad in the middle shot at his character. They were actually able to take one wound off of him just because he has a 2-up save and then he's behind cover, and they didn't have any AP, so it was a whole thing. But then the other strike squad actually shot at the Dune Crawler, because I don't want to risk them for whatever reason killing the Dune Rider without them getting into combat with it. And I think they actually did 1 damage, which was kind of impressive. And then my Grandmaster shot at him doing 4 damage, which was nice. Less impressive because he's supposed to do that, but and then my Paladins shot at the other Dune Crawler and they did a whole lot of nothing. So, but he rolled those saves because they were super low AP and he has a pretty high save. So, yep, that was the shooting phase. Alright, you guys, so I started with my Grandmaster because his charge was kind of important, and he failed it. And then I used a command point, and then he rolled double 1s. So that is 0 for 2 charges that he has tried to make this entire game, and he has failed both of them. Much shame. The strike squad just adjacent to him, however, rolled very high for their charge, and they got into the Scorpius Dune Rider. And then the strike squad in the middle rolled very high for the Tech Priest Dominus, his character on his back objective. And then my Paladins, the other heavy damage dealers, rolled garbage for their charge, and they did nothing. Even though they were the ones who had the teleport, so they were supposed to wipe a unit off, but they of course did nothing, because they're garbage. So charge phase was 2 for 4. Half of them made it, half of them didn't. So that's kind of not super great, but we'll see. If my Grandmaster survives 1 more turn, he will at least be in a guaranteed charge position. But I don't know what the chances of that are. So anyway, alright, you guys. So at the start of the fight phase, his character did an ability thing that made my strike squad that was on him swing last. So I swung with my 2-man strike squad, and the Justicar was able to wipe off the Dune Rider with its 2 wounds left. Did not explode, and they didn't consolidate, so that way the only thing that can see them is the Dune Crawler. Then his guy swung, he
Did 1 wound.
did 1 wound, okay, I couldn't remember. Yeah, so I guess it's on that guy on the sword. And then they swung back, and they were able to kill him.
No, he did 1 wound and you saved it. So.
Oh. Okay, so I saved the 1 wound. Okay, yeah. And then that was combat. I did not consolidate. This way they can hide behind this terrain, so whoever's gonna come for them has to actually make some effort to do so. But yeah, that was the fight phase. That was better, I think. Puts me on a better footing. I don't know points-wise, but yeah. So for secondary, or for points in general, I had at the beginning of the round, the hold 2, hold 3 for my primaries. I actually was able to get 2 points for Tide of Conviction this time. And then engage in all fronts, I'm in all 4 quarters, so I got the full 3 points for that. So my other secondaries, unfortunately, have been 0. And Nephilim data I haven't been able to do for a little bit, so we'll see how we go.
Alright, for the movement phase, I just moved everyone into position as best I am able to try to retake things and slaughter enemies. Alright, so for the shooting phase, I had the green Onager fire at the 1 Terminators on the objective, wiped him off the map. Then I had my Onager Doomcrawler Red fire at the Grandmaster Nemesis armor, and 1 of his shots finally got through and did damage. My opponent used the stratagem to reroll, still went through and did 4 damage to it. That could have been it. And then my Tech Priest Manipulus at the bottom mag dumped the Grey Knights on this spot here, He didn't do anything. All his attacks did not wound. A 1, 2, and a 3 to wound. He needed 4 ups. And the blue Cataphrons fired at the Grey Knights that were on the objective on the right, killed 1 guy. And then the Cataphrons in green were touching the wall there so they could see through. And so they basically mag dumped a squad on there and wiped them to the man. And that is my shooting phase and my turn. So for my points, I did not claim any because I do not have 2. It was a sad thing. I did not have Tide of Conviction. Grind them down. He killed more than me. With Abhor the Witch, I did wipe out another squad, so that's another 2 points. Uncharted Sequencing, I do not have the objective that's on the 4th turn that I marked as the 4th turn. However, I am primed to take the 5th one. So we'll see how that goes.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, my Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight ran. He's injured, but he's still very much capable of doing a lot of damage. Then my Librarian moved over onto this objective here. And then my Paladins moved up. And my Grey Knight Justicar over here on the side, he moved farther into cover to where he can't really be seen unless they come all the way around the corner. And he is doing the Neckman data because I might as well try. And then, actually that was it, yeah. Oh, my Purgators moved down a little bit to see the big Doom Crawler and hopefully kill it, but I find that unlikely. So yeah, that was my movement phase. Alright guys, so my Grandmaster did Empiric Amplification on the Onager Doomcrawler. Basically means any Psi or Nemesis weapons have an additional damage against it, so if he charges, it should die. The Purgators did Astral Aim on themselves, and the Paladins did Hammer Hand. And then the Librarian tried to smite the blue Cataphrons, but they failed miserably. Or he failed, I should say. He rolled a 3. An army of psychers. Anyway, and that was the psychic phase. Alright, you guys, so actually, who shot? The Purgators shot at his Doomcrawler. And they did nothing. Yeah, they did nothing. Then the Paladins shot at the green Cataphrons, and they did 2 wounds. So they did something. And that was my shooting phase. The Grandmaster ran, and the other guy is doing neck data. So, alright, you guys. So my Paladins charged in, and they failed. So I used a command point to re-roll it, and they failed again. So, just kind of pathetic. My Grandmaster, however, did get in. He only needed like a 2 or a 3, but he rolled a 9 finally. The one time he actually didn't need it, he did it. Anyway, so yeah, so that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so in the fight phase, the Grandmaster came in. He had 4 attacks. I think 3 went through to the wounds. But two went through, so he didn't save 2 because they were -3. And they were a d6 plus 1 because of Empiric Amplification. He had 5 wounds left because I rolled a 6 with my Tide of Convergence, so he took a mortal wound. And then I did 7 damage, so I rolled a 5, so it would have been just enough, but each one also got the additional 1 from Empiric Amplification. Then he used a command point to auto-explode. He did 3 mortal wounds, but luckily Grey Knights have a 5-up save against mortal wounds. And he was able to save 1, so he is still alive.
Yeah, he got lucky. I would have. It was Machine Spirit's Revenge was the command ability. He got lucky. Rolling that 1 5-up, he would have died right there.
Yeah, that's all I needed. Alright, you guys, so for points, unfortunately at the beginning of my turn I was only holding 2 objectives, so I only got 1 primary. I did get 3 points for engage in all fronts, and I did get my additional Nephilim data. I had the one guy doing it, and luckily I rolled a 1 on his thing, so he was actually able to pull the data, which is crazy. So let's hope that helps me, because he still has his whole turn. And then I'll get 2 points for Tide of Conviction, hopefully, at the end of this, but we'll see what actually goes down once everything is done, said and done.
Alright, this is playing chess right now, so I'm going for the final game objectives. So the Onager Doomcrawler, I want to be able to get line of sight for that Brotherhood Librarian and hold the objective. So I am now, in the end, I just like touch the very tip of it, so I am technically claiming it, and I have line of sight to the Librarian. The Blue Cataphron squad moved up to see that Grey Knight Justicar. The Tech Priest is just sitting there, and the Cataphrons are just sitting there as well because they got line of sight to pretty much everything nearby. And we'll see how this goes. Alright, so for shooting phase, first I had the Onager Doomcrawler mag dump the Brotherhood Librarian, and he made all his saves. Each of those was AP -4 or D3 damage, and he made all the 5-ups. He spent a CP to turn his 5-up into a 4-up, but he didn't need it. So then I had the Blue Cataphron Destroyers fire at the one last guy on that objective, that one guy, and they successfully killed him with 7 wounds. And so once he died, that means I get an extra 2 points for Report of the Witch. Then I had my green unit of Cataphrons fire at the Grey Knight Grandmaster, and they just killed him. He failed 4 wounds. And that was it for my shooting and my turn. And this about does it. So because I'm the turn 5 and I went second, I claim my objectives at the end of the turn. So I control 2, control 3, and I control more. And then I don't remember if I got grinded down. Abhor the Witch. I killed that last squad there, that one guy, giving me to 2. And Uncharted Sequencing, the objective that I marked for 5, I actually got it for 5. And that pipe dream came real. So I'm up to 12 there, and because that objective is also in my points half, I get Tide of Conviction, another 2 points from there. And that ends the game. Wow, that is the first time on our channel we've been able to get a game to the very, very, very end. My
quite a while.
Goodness, it was close. So MVP, LVP. So for Mechanicus, LVP. The Electro Priests, when I really needed them to clutch, they failed. Like,
they did.
They were the first squad to get in. That killed the Ancient was the one that did the most. After that, just morale destroyed them, absolutely obliterated them. They really failed on there. The green squad absolutely failed to wipe out the Terminator squad. Out of the 2 targets, they easily could have done that, and they just failed so hard. And the red squad took forever to get out, and when it finally did, it was stumbled and barely did anything, and they just got completely obliterated. So these guys were so great in the last game. In this game, they just failed so hard.
So hard.
Yeah. And then the Cataphron Destroyers, I'm going to have to give them as the MVP, the green squad specifically, because every time they shot, they were just obliterating everything. Like, straight up, every single time. They just kept wiping things out, left and right. They did the most shots, the most damage, and they contributed the most. I mean, they're the ones who killed the Grandmaster, so... I mean, there was a lot of things that could have been close to the LVP, and there was a lot of things that could have been close to the MVP, but these are the ones that stood out for me. So what about you?
Well, MVP I think was probably the Paladins. I think across the board they survived through the most, but then also probably pulled out the most damage. I think had some mobility issues,
Yes.
but I think Paladins really kind of held their own and did really good. They have a lot of attacks, so they were able to eat through a good bit of stuff.
Against the Castellans, they survived. Like, one turn I did 10 wounds to, another turn I did like 13 or 14, and I just barely was killing anything. They just kept making their saves.
Yeah, and then their damage back was, I mean, they were hitting on 5s half the time, so that was a little difficult. But yeah, so they did pretty good. They failed pretty much all of their charges though, so that was not great. Same with the Grandmaster, but when he did get there, he did, you know, oodles of damage. So LVP though, I can't really make up my mind. I think it's between Crow and the Librarian. Crow, he failed all of it, like everything in my army failed their charges, except like the random things, the strikes with freaking troops. And then he just got mowed down, so he didn't get a chance to do anything, and he didn't really do much with his sidekick phases. So he just kind of didn't do anything. He had a lot of potential though, but it never really worked out. And then the Librarian, this is technically my fault, but his spell, like, he just he didn't. All he did really was change the tides of the warp. And I don't think that was really worth his points. The other spell, I thought he could put it on people, the Ethereal Castigation, but it turns out it's only for himself. So that was unfortunate. So he essentially just every now and then changed the tides of the warp and just sat on objectives. So I would say that's kind of LVP. The Paladin Ancient, he died straight up, but I think had he lived, that's why he's not over here, he actually would have been a huge boost, because then he would have given the Paladins +1 to hit and +1 attack on the regular. And that's without Symphonic Strike, so they could have had +2 attacks, +1 to hit, reroll wounds. Like, the Paladins could have been really, really ugly. But because the Ancient died. Because, again, everyone failed their first turn charges.
That was impressive.
Yeah, so... but yeah, so that's what I would say. MVP, LVPs, Paladins, and then the 2 side characters.
Yeah, overall this game was very interesting because it looked like when you had that massive failure of your charges, it really looked like it was going to go to me. And then all of a sudden, like my electrolytes, like 4 from each squad just was obliterated on morale, and then they
They evaporated pretty quick after that.
Yeah, it's just like, it's ridiculous. And then you just push through and just the slaughter. My guns could not keep up. The Cataphrons were doing good, but they just were not enough. Yeah. Probably the biggest thing was this sequencing thing, and I only did it because of the map layout, because of how many objectives were so close to home. So like, I could easily guarantee 3 of them, pretty much. Well,
the hard part was my secondary, the stupid teleport assault. Every time I did it, they failed their charge, and so they never were able to actually pull it off, and it's so annoying.
Yeah, and it's just like non-stop ridiculous things happening. It's like tremendous failures on both our ends, and you got super lucky at times. I got super lucky at times. The fact that your grandmaster
saves this game.
The fact that your grandmaster was not obliterated by my onager. Yeah. This was game was a mess.
The teleporting was interesting, so the whole army can teleport. But I don't know if it was worth it, you know?
Yeah, in some case, like, honestly, like, you can do up to half.
I think it's pretty hard to call as well, like, whether or not it's worth it at the beginning of the game. Like, looking back on it, it's like, okay, that probably was not worth it. But at the beginning, it's just like, you know, they could ride out a round of shooting, and then they can jump in and theoretically, but, you know, those 9-inch charges are not easy to pull off.
Yeah, so like when I play Deathwing and stuff, it's like, it's super risky. Like, it can make or break a game just by a couple dice rolls. And like when I play Deathwing, I have to like do +1 charges, reroll charges, abilities stack. It's ridiculous what I have to do just to get a chance at it to be viable.
Well, even with the rerolls, my character, they all failed. They were just terrible.
Yeah, surprisingly, that was legitimate bad luck on the Grandmaster's part, how he failed all his charges and rerolls.
Charge.
But a few things overall, since this is the last time I'm playing Mechanicus, probably for a while, or maybe ever. I do not particularly like the way this army plays. I just don't gel with it. It doesn't excite me. But a few things I'm noticing is that so book-wise, I can understand why there's a lot of nerfs, but they've undone a bunch of the nerfs. But I can see that the book is really split in two between the Canticles and the Doctrinas, and so there's essentially 2 armies in one book. And so I did mostly the vehicles and kind of stuff. The Scutari, well, not the robots, and my onagers and stuff were the Scutari kind of things. But it's hard to really say, like, this isn't really my style, because it can go like both like heavy shooting, but also not really heavy shooting. It's like they have a little bit of shooting that hits really, really hard. That's what I noticed. And so, like, overall, I'm not really a fan. Even the characters, they just apply some buffs, but I noticed the tech priests are really just not that good. Overall, the few buffs they give really don't add up too much. So overall, not my favorite type of army.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not my favorite type of army. So what else you guys say?
Well, I was gonna say, I actually enjoyed playing the Grey Knights. I've been wanting to play them for quite some time, so it was nice to have that chance. They are surprisingly resilient, and they have a lot of attacks. Like, that's kind of crazy. I guess they're one step down from, the Golden Boys, though. But so it was actually fun playing them. I don't know how many people I would teleport in the future.
So when it comes to teleporting, just on basic stuff, maybe 2 to 3 units to try to, at the very least one, just to try to get your opponent to be more conservative early on to try to control their movements. 2 to 3 would be fine, but you have to really build a strategy around that. Maybe deep strike a very shooty unit in so that at the very least you will show up and then just nuke something. Yeah.
Well, that was the idea with the Paladins. They had the 4 flamers, and then they're just lethal in combat. And then, so what I was going to do is I was going to have the Grandmaster charge in, because when he's in combat, he gives +1 to charge for anyone who's charging the same people. And I was like, oh, okay. But then anyway, super annoying. But yeah, so that didn't work out. And the hard part is they're very slow, so it's hard to... I don't know how well they would work other than just straight up holding like a front line, like, and just bullying other units, So yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I did enjoy them.
But I will
say next time I'll try something different.
But I will say this was a mess of a game. Just back and forth is ridiculous.
Yeah. Arbit rolls both sides, but it was interesting. It was fun.
Yeah, I got the early game and I was just barely able to hold on. Just like yeah. All right, well, GG's.